Businesses thrive by knowing customer insights because today's insights are tomorrow's facts. At iResearch, we live and breathe insights. And despite searching high and low, we were unable to find a customer insights podcast that answers one of the most important questions in business. Why do customers do what they do? So we launched one. Hi, I'm your host, Darshan Mehta. Today I'm speaking with Robert Spector, who has been involved in customer service since the age of 13, when he started working at his family butcher shop, Spector's Meat Market in New Jersey. Robert has been a speaker on the Nordstrom Way to customer service for over 25 years. He is a best-selling author and journalist for over 50 years. He has written 27 books, most notably The Nordstrom Way, Amazon, Get Big Fast, The Mom and Pop Store, and he's going to tell us about his upcoming book as well. Welcome, Robert. How are you?
Okay. Thank you, Darshan. Happy to be here.
So I want to hear about your journey as to, starting out as a 13-year-old, and then how did you make the path to the connection with Nordstrom? And tell us about some of the pivotal moments and epiphanies you've had along the way.
Okay, well, I started out, as you mentioned, at the age of 13, working in my family butcher shop. It was a typical immigrant family business started by my grandfather, my father, my uncle, and numerous cousins. And we had a couple of outside employees as well. But, for anyone who grew up in a immigrant mom and pop business, it's labor intensive. And it's a good way for relatives to get a job if English is not their first language. My father was from Ukraine, very timely these days, and most of his customers were Eastern European immigrants like himself. And he would carry ethnic specialty foods, but he could also sell his wares in Ukrainian and Russian and various Slavic languages. And I observed him doing it. I was not a big fan of working in the market. It was outside. It was cold in New Jersey in the winter and hot in the summer. And Saturday was our big day, and I wanted to be playing with my friends. So fast forward, I eventually became a journalist, and we can get into that later, obviously. But I wrote for trade newspapers and wrote a lot about retail. And then I had an opportunity to write a book on Nordstrom, which turned out to be The Nordstrom Way, and it completely changed my life. But I became a speaker, and while I was speaking to audiences, I started to reflect back on the kind of customer service that my father gave. And these were all lessons I learned when I didn't think I had been paying attention. And it was, having the right product at the right time, being an honest person, giving good value, and give the customers what they want. Because we had customers from various ethnic groups, we would carry their delicacies, whether it was head cheese or brains or whatever. And my father was able to have a very successful business out of this and retire at age 65 and never look back. So when I would be speaking to companies like Pfizer or Dell or Charles Schwab, I would tell some stories about my father. And I would say, surely if this immigrant with an education could figure out customer service, surely all the brilliant PhDs and MBAs in this audience could figure it out too. And people would come up to me afterward and say, I love those stories about your father, because they weren't corporate BS. They were a farmer's market in New Jersey. This was ground zero of learning about customer service. So that was really my first exposure to this whole customer service thing.
And how did you end up connecting with Nordstrom, and how has that relationship changed and evolved over the years?
Yeah, well, I had been a trade journalist for Women's Wear Daily and other newspapers owned by what was then Fairchild Publications. So I had worked for them in New York earlier in my career. And when I came to Seattle, I was the correspondent for all of these papers. So I wrote a lot about retail. And there were some brand new companies that were starting to to make themselves known in the world. There's a little coffee company called Starbucks, which very few people had heard of it. At that time, Starbucks was so small. I did an article for Home Furnishings Daily, and I said, there's this coffee company here that sells a lot of espresso machines and coffee grinders. I think that they're worth a story. The Starbucks was so small at that time. Howard Schultz himself met me at one of their stores to talk about the number of SKUs they were moving on espresso machines and coffee grinders. And I later wrote a book, Corporate History of a Department Store in Seattle called Frederick and Nelson, which was owned by Marshall Field. And it was a traditional department store. And in fact, the building where Nordstrom is in downtown Seattle now used to be the Frederick and Nelson building. Then I was contacted by a literary agent in 1990, August 2nd, 1990, my mother's birthday and the day Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait, to give you a little historical context there. And it was literary agent in Seattle, Elizabeth Whale, whose next door neighbor was a Nordstrom salesman named Pat McCarthy, who had been number one 15 years in a row and sold men's suits in the downtown Seattle store, outfitted entire law firms and accounting firms. And the Seattle Times had just done an article about him. So the original idea was I was going to ghostwrite a book about him. It was going to be kind of a reverse Iacocca. For those people in your audience who remember Lee Iacocca, who was a very famous CEO of Chrysler and became a kind of a media celebrity and wrote a best-selling book called Iacocca. So our book was going to be from the sales floor up, not from the boardroom down. And I got together with Pat, wrote an extensive proposal, 10,000 words. We shopped it around to publishers. They were more interested in Nordstrom corporately than they were in this particular employee. So it went through a metamorphosis where it became my book. I was able to get the Nordstrom family, then the third generation, to cooperate with me. And 5 years after that phone call, 5 years, that book came out. And it became a bestseller and changed my life.
Wow. That's quite a story. And I think you've deepened your relationships further with the family and the company since then, right?
Yeah. Well, at that time, now, for those people who are not completely familiar with Nordstrom, they're 121 years old. They've been a publicly traded company since 1971. So over 50 years as a publicly traded company, but there are still Nordstroms running Nordstrom, currently the second generation. There were three brothers running it. Unfortunately, one passed away a couple of years ago. And they're both on the board. And the fact that there are still Nordstroms running Nordstrom is the single biggest competitive advantage that they have. Now, the fellows who run it now, Eric and Pete Nordstrom, like their brothers, like their father and grandfather and uncles and cousins, all started out like when they were 12 years old, breaking down shoe boxes and working for the company, third assistant children's shoe buyer. And they were not crown princes. It isn't like, you got your MBA, there's your corner office. That would be completely un-Nordstrom. You've got to work for it. You got to earn it. And over the years, as you said, I've developed very fortunate, a close relationship with the company and the family. Bruce Nordstrom, who's the father of the two fellows running the company now, I helped him with his memoir a few years ago. We recently did an update. I count myself very fortunate to have the trust of the Nordstrom family.
What's amazing is not only has the company survived for 120 years, but they've been able to pass on this way of business through generations, which is not an easy task to do. How have they accomplished that?
Well, yeah, not only is it not easy, it's almost impossible. The fact that, as I alluded to, everyone starts out on the floor. Now, there are a lot of Nordstroms. There are many, many Nordstroms who are not involved with the company, but everybody had the opportunity. Shoes have always been a big thing with Nordstrom because they were strictly a shoe store for their first 65 years of their existence. The shoehorn, go out on the floor, sell shoes. Let's see how you can do. And if you like it, fine. If you don't like it, that's okay too. And so the ones who like it really understand the culture. and they know that they are the keepers of the culture. And as one of the guys in the fourth generation, Pete, one of the two guys who are running it now, it says, we don't want to screw this thing up. So there's this enormous family pride. Their name is on the front door. It's on the front of the building. So there is that desire to make sure that this is a sustainable organization. It has been. The fellows now running it are in their late 50s. There's one Nordstrom in the fifth generation who is working for the company. But there are there is an executive team of non-Nordstroms, but people who have worked there 20, 30 years who carry that culture with them. And anytime I hear rumblings that maybe Nordstrom will be bought out, there was a rumor a couple of years ago, maybe Amazon would buy them. And I've always said, if somebody bought Nordstrom, they'd be buying the assets, the physical assets. They'd be buying the real estate. They'd be buying the merchandise, but they wouldn't be buying Nordstrom. Nordstrom would be over if an outside company bought them, because they wouldn't understand the culture. And you look at your expenses for companies that still have a lot of brick and mortar stores. What's your biggest expense? It's labor. Well, I know how to get profitable. We've got 10 people in that department. Now we have 7 people in that department. Whoa, aren't I a genius? I just saved you all that money. But again, the culture uber alles. It is the culture. They'll be the first to tell you they're not selling anything that you can't get somewhere else. And if it's lesser made at a cheaper price. And so what can we do to entice you to buy our stuff? So it's the culture that empowers people to build relationships. And it's relationships not only when you walk into the store, it's relationships via our social media. So they give salespeople all the technology that they need to enhance that relationship with the customer. So it's always asking, what's next?
Interesting. So let's talk about the Nordstrom Way to customer service. That's something you've been talking about for 25 years. What are the fundamental elements that make Nordstrom's Way unique and different, and how has it evolved over the years?
Well, I'm going to start to sound boring and repetitious. So, again, start with the idea that it's the customer. We are here to serve the customer, not the other way around. So how can we make our offering enticing for the customer to want to do business with us? And first of all, it's having the right product, the right style, and the right color, the right size at the right time. That's certainly important. You have to sell the goods. And if people are still coming into the store, and they are, it's developing a relationship with a salesperson. So salespeople are empowered, and we can get into empowerment later, are empowered to build their own business, to be a franchise within a franchise. Because all salespeople at Nordstrom on the floor are on commission. They're all salaried employees. They work for the company. They aren't independent. But where they make their money is on commission. And people can make, retail salespeople can make in the 6 figures by building up a clientele. I know, a men's suit salesman in Southern California, another one in Washington, D.C., they have regular customers who are spending $35K, $50K with them a year. You get a few of those, that's a pretty good business. And they've earned the trust of those customers. Now, I'm going to sell you. So if you're my customer, Darshan, I know your size, I know your style, I know what's in your closet, I know if you've gained weight or lost weight. I know, the name of your spouse or your children, when their birthdays are. I know when your birthday is. I know when your wedding anniversary is. And in the old days, in the pre-technology, good salespeople would make phone calls. Now you send texts. Occasionally, you're going to use the phone. I'm thinking of you. this great Armani suit came in. I think it would be perfect for you. And and today I'll send you a picture of it, and you'll say yes or no. And if you say yes, I already have your credit card information. Do you want me to send that to you? You're going to come in to have it altered. What's a good day to do that? It's like any other sales thing. We keep the thing moving. You made a decision. When can we tie this all up? And then once you've come in, the suit's been altered. Do you want me to send it to your home? You want me to send it to your office? You want me to send it to the closest Nordstrom nearest you? Your choice. I'm going to make it as easy as possible for you to buy this and to be happy about it. It's just making it easy for the customer to buy stuff.
But going back to empowerment, it almost seems, are they basically hiring people or training people to be their own entrepreneurs? I mean, it sounds, really interesting. How do they instill this? Is it the recruiting process or the training process or both?
Well, it is both, but part of it, it has to start with the recruiting process, explaining how the system is set up and explaining that you are only limited by your own ambition. So if you want to, be above average, you can be above average. If you want to be great, you can be great. We will give you all the tools that you need. We'll give you the best merchandise we have. We'll give you the best social media. We will follow up with anything you need. Go. So, now you have to hit your goals, because sales per hour is one of the key metrics. Now, everybody's sales per hour in their department is listed in the stock room. So I know how much you're making, you know how much I'm making. You know where we are on the list. Being at the bottom of that list is not a good place to be, because ultimately, if you are not selling, if you're just breaking even, that's not doing either one of you any good. So Nordstrom will either give you a little more training if they see that you've got the aptitude for it, but maybe you're a little inexperienced. So training, maybe they'll move you to a non-sales position because they like you and you're infused with the spirit, but you're just not a salesperson. Then the third alternative is there's the door. So so they're looking for those motivated self-starters. You hear about motivational speakers. I've always had my question. If you need somebody else to motivate you, then that's just not going to work, because then you're going to have to call up that person every time you don't feel motivated. Motivate me. No, that has to come from inside, and those are the people that they're looking for.
So how do they maintain a healthy competition among people within a department as opposed to becoming cutthroat?
That is a tough one, because there are cutthroats in there. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. There are people who there are some people who Nordstrom would encourage a brand new, relatively new salesperson to find a mentor. Look around once you've been assigned to an department. Look at the people, somebody or people that you think are doing the kind of job or being the kind of employee that you would want to be. Now, some people are flattered. Said, "Sure, I'd be happy to mentor you." Other people said, "Nah, not my thing. Now, I'm doing my thing. You can figure out how to do your thing." But you're evaluated at Nordstrom on 3 criteria. One, of course, is customer service. One, of course, is sales, but the other is teamwork. So if you are a shark and you're going to kind of grab everybody who comes into your department, even if you don't have time to wait on them, that's not going to fly, because you also need to have that team player element, because sometimes I'm going to need another person in my department. I might have a a difficult issue with a customer. Perhaps they may have a physical ailment or they may have some sizing issues, whatever. But part of it is how are you helping out the other person in your department? Now, Nordstrom is very competitive, and they don't make any apologies. So now the top salespeople are competing against themselves. So today, when we're doing this interview, today or a year ago on this date, I did X amount in sales. Now this year, and 2 years ago on this date, I did a certain amount. Now this year, I want to outdo what I did last year. But also, departments compete against each other. Stores compete against Nordstrom stores compete against each other, and then of course they compete against the external competition as well. But it's will there be times when people have gone over the line and are cutthroat? Absolutely. Within a system like that, it's inescapable. But the idea is to if it's being abused, management will step in.
How transferable is the Nordstrom Way to other companies and organizations?
Oh, I think it's completely transferable. Most of the groups I speak to are not in retail. And I've been doing this for over a quarter of a century. I could probably count the number of retailers, 20 or 30. But I speak to a lot of people in financial services, in healthcare, in pharmaceuticals, almost any business you can imagine, language translation, wine, grape growing. I mean, it's, the whole idea is you have a customer, and also I speak to companies that are B2C and B2B. And if you have a customer and a customer that has a need, and you have either the product or the service to satisfy that need, and I'm going to listen to what you have to say. I'm going to find the best fit for you, follow up. I'm going to develop a relationship with you. If there's an issue, you're going to contact me, and I'm going to take care of it. All those things. So there are many people who had summer jobs at Nordstrom who became lawyers, who became doctors, who became accountants. But they take, and these are people not only that I've spoken to personally, but people who I know who have written articles about it. There's a woman who wrote an article in Forbes several years ago who is a partner at a major Seattle law firm. She had jobs at Nordstrom, and her article was what I learned as a salesperson at Nordstrom and how that helped me be a good lawyer. So all this is transferable.
So what would you say are the essential elements of creating a values-driven service culture? Because that's what you're talking about, right?
Right. Well, values, you can have the practices, the ways of doing business, technology, that changes. That has to change. Strategies change. But values have to be consistent. They have to be non-negotiable. This is because it represents who you are as a culture. So that must never change. There's an old. I'm a big fan of the Marx Brothers. So in one of their movies, Groucho Marx says to the person he's negotiating with, "These are my principles, and if you don't like them, I have others." So at Nordstrom, these are the values. And if you don't like them, find some other place. So we're talking about, things that are so basic, stuff that you were raised with. So we're talking about trust and respect and loyalty and humility and awareness and communication and transformation and also having fun. That's a part of it too. So when I give half-day presentations, I will talk about these various values. And for your typical keynote time for about an hour or so, we take a break, and then the group will come back, and I cover basically 8 principles. So we count off 1 through 8. The ones go to this table, the 2s go to that table, etc. Then I ask them to brainstorm. How can this value apply to your company? And I've done this again with every kind of business all over the world, and it really comes down to, I've come away with 2 immutable truths. And when I hear people who are asked by their leadership, how can we, from your point of view, how can we make your job easier? What tools can we give you to make things better? So again, I've been hearing people talk about it, and people can be passionate about their own job because somebody has asked me my opinion. So the 2 immutable truths is most people want to do a good job. And the other is most people want to feel a part of something bigger than themselves. And it's the responsibility of management to make sure that that's the case.
So you stated that when it comes to singing the song of customer service, anyone can recite the words, but few can carry the tune.
Right.
And
right.
Why is that?
Well, if everybody knows what good customer service is supposed to sound like, we listen to our customers, and we're there for them, and all that. It's like at the end of every, not every, but annual reports where the CEO talks about all the things, and then the last line is, "Of course, our biggest asset is our people." How many times have you read that one, right? Of course, we're laying off 10% of our biggest assets, but stuff happens. Yeah, everybody knows the cliche. Cliches become cliches because they're true. And taking care of the customer, being customer focused, and a lot of times companies or trade groups they kind of overshoot. They say, we want you to talk about cutting edge customer service or knock your socks off customer service. I said, why don't you talk about just good, solid customer service? And because it's not about the spectacular. And I've had people tell me spectacular Nordstrom stories. This has been told to me many times by many different men here in particular. They flew into a city. They were going to have a big meeting at 9:00 the next day. The airline lost their luggage. So they got this big meeting. They have no clothes to wear. And so they call Nordstrom, and they get a hold of a guy in the men's suit department. And they tell them, I need a suit, I need a shirt, I need a tie, I probably need shoes too. And they, what's your size, what color are you looking for, et cetera, et cetera. And come to the store. We'll have it all for you. We'll have a tailor on hand for when you need it. So they go there, they get outfitted, and they head to their meeting, and they feel like $1 million. And I've probably heard that story 20 times over the course. A man will come up to me at the break, and he'll tell me a version of that story. So it's, we're here for you when you need us. This is an emergency. It's not, I'm sorry, we're closed. I mean, people will come in early. They will go above and beyond the call of duty because that's a part of the culture. And it's singled out and it's rewarded. And it's made known that so-and-so did this particular outstanding act of customer service. So if you're an employee, you say, well, the people who run this place think that these acts of customer service are a good idea. Well, I should do that too. See, Nordstrom has an employee handbook, and I use employee handbook in quotes, which is just a 3-inch by 5-inch card. And it essentially says, welcome to Nordstrom. We're glad to have you with our company. We hope you have a great career, et cetera, et cetera. We're all about taking care of the customer. We have only one rule. You turn the card over the other side. It says, use good judgment in all situations. use good judgment in all situations. There will be no additional rules. So you can ask your department manager, store manager, any question at any time. That's it. Use good judgment. But what does good judgment look like? And so you tell stories of employees taking care of customers, going above and beyond. It's not like, giving them free merchandise, giving them the store. You're taking care of them in their time of need. Now, anybody who's listening to this podcast, if you said to your client, "How can I make your life easier?" Well, that's a great opening line. I could think of several ways you could make my life easier. So not only are they going to tell you, then it's up to you to follow those steps to make their life easier. So all these outstanding salespeople, they get other clients because they have other satisfied clients. It's like, as I said, I speak to a lot of people in real estate. Real estate is a referral business. You might not sell a house to the same person, or maybe 10 years down the road, but you're going to need their relatives and their friends and everything. Contact so and so. He sold my house and it was a great price, and he took care of everything. It's just taking care of the customer. So why should they go to work to do business with anybody else?
Yeah. What you're saying sounds absolute common sense, and, everyone should be doing it. But why do you think so many people still don't do this? I mean, not in just retail, but in many industries.
Well, as someone once said, common sense is not that common. So, to me, what happens, and needless to say, I've given this a lot of thought over the years because, as a professional speaker and author, and I'm in front of crowds of very smart professional people. I'm telling them stuff that they already know, but they need to hear it from somebody else. And part of it is that management does not make that a priority. They may say that it's a priority, but when it comes down to the reality of the business, it isn't a priority. Therefore, if I'm lower down the totem pole, if management doesn't think it's a priority, then I don't think it's a priority. And if you're a publicly traded company, you certainly have a little bit, or in some cases a lot more pressure, because you have shareholders and you have to keep that value and increase that value. So quite often it's very short term. So what can we do today or the next few days so this quarter looks good? And the fact that, as I said, Nordstrom has been is a publicly traded company, has been for over 50 years. There are still Nordstroms on the board, and the Nordstrom family has a considerable amount of stock. I'm not saying that they have a leeway. I mean, they still have to deliver because they are a publicly traded company. They do have an outside chairman, but they do take a long-term view. So they've been so we really haven't talked much about the internet. So Nordstrom, the Nordstrom store headquarters is less than a kilometer from the Amazon headquarters. So Amazon debuted its website in 1995. Nordstrom had its website in 1998. And unlike many other retailers back then in those early days of the internet, a lot of big retailers made their online business a completely separate entity. So Barnes & Noble, the big, or used to be a big bookstore chain in the U.S., so they had their Barnes & Noble brick and mortar stores, and then they had a site called bn.com. Now, if I ordered a book on bn.com and I wanted to return it to a Barnes & Noble store, I couldn't do it. Completely different. Everything was different. Same thing with Walmart. Walmart, located in Arkansas, in the southwest part of the U.S., had their internet operation on the East Coast in California, a couple thousand miles away. But Nordstrom always integrated its business, its online business, with its brick and mortar business. And they've been doing it more and more and more. So salespeople today have a view of all inventory, wherever it is in the country, whether it's from Nordstrom.com or the stores. And it's so they've always embraced the technology. Even though they're a legacy retailer, they know that if we aren't adapting to the reality, we're not going to be around. So today, online, or rather brick and mortar sales, for those people who are familiar with Nordstrom, whether they've been to stores in downtown Chicago or San Francisco or New York, but those people who go to shopping centers where Nordstrom is an anchor, so they call those the full line stores. Those stores account for only a third of their business, only a third of their sales. Online is over 50%, 50. And of course, COVID accelerated that, but that's where it was going anyway. And Nordstrom says that they're channel agnostic, that there's not a brick and mortar customer, there's not an online customer, there's just a customer. And most people these days sometimes shop online, sometimes go into the store. So why should you treat them any differently? A customer is a customer is a customer. And so they're always looking to see, now the technology is only valid if it improves the customer experience. It's not technology for technology's sake. It's not, the bright, shiny new object. How does this make life easier for the customer? How does it save them time? How does it make it more convenient? And ultimately, how does that help us sell more stuff?
Mm-hmm. So tell me about the new book you're working on.
Okay, well, my new book, and I don't have a date on it yet. I'm working on it right now. It's going to be called The 120-Year-Old Startup, the Nordstrom Way to Change, Challenges, and Customer Service. So it looks at a brief history. It's going to be much shorter than my previous books, and it's built around the structure is built around the acronym of FACTS, FACTS. So F is flexibility, A is for agility, C is communication, T is transformation, S is social responsibility. So in this COVID era, they've had to be flexible and agile. They've had to communicate not only with employees, but certainly with customers. The end result is transformation, and it's all but covered now with the idea of social responsibility. And that covers a wide range of subjects, the environment to LGBTQ issues and everything in between. And they're making the commitment in all of these areas. And today, young people are looking for companies that share their feelings about the environment, about social issues, how they're treated, opportunities for advancement. So social responsibility kind of ties all this together to create a culture of people who are moving in the same direction for the particular company.
Is there an area of the Nordstrom Way that you're still looking to do a deeper dive? And what area is that and why?
I think if I did a deeper dive on Nordstrom Way, I would hit my head on the bottom of the ocean floor. I made a pretty deep dive here, but so this book, The 120-Year-Old Startup, is really going to be my valedictory of everything that I've learned and thought about. I've interviewed three members of three of the four generations of Nordstrom. The founder, John W. Nordstrom, died in 1963, but his last surviving son, I interviewed in October of 1992, and then I've interviewed all the members of the third and fourth generations. I have a unique view on this, and Nordstrom never bores me. I mean, you would think after all these years, you'd say, well, move on to something else. And I've certainly written about other things. And if you want to talk a touch about my book on Amazon, I'd be happy to. But because it's constantly changing, and dollar for dollar, it's one of the greatest business stories in the history of American business. We will never see its like again. And I'm happy that I've had the opportunity to chronicle it, and they're going to be around for a whole lot longer.
That sounds great. So, in the world of values-driven service culture, who would you love to have lunch with, and why?
That's an excellent question. I'd certainly like to have lunch with Warren Buffett. I think that would be interesting. I'd like to have certainly lunch with Jeff Bezos. Now, I interviewed him for a project that was not associated with the book that I ultimately wrote. Amazon, in fact, chose not to cooperate with me when that book came out because they felt it was too early. But I was able to explain how Amazon became Amazon. I interviewed 5 of the first 6 employees and some of Jeff's former employers, his former girlfriends, and such. And so that book came out in April of 2000. In October of 2000, both Jeff Bezos and I were speaking in Stockholm, along with Nicholas Negroponte and Philip Kotler. So I knew where Jeff was going to be. It was a one-day thing. I knew where he was going to be before he went out on stage. I went over to him, reintroduced myself, and he said, I read your book. I thought you did a good job. So that was 22 years ago. I'd like to catch up with him now and say, so Jeff, what are you up to here? Because he is a visionary. But when I was writing that book and people were in the throes of the internet, people were saying, well, we're not going to need any more brick and mortar stores. Everybody's going to be ordering online in their pajamas in the middle of the night. And I knew that was patently absurd because we're all social animals. We need to be in the marketplace. We need to be in the agora because there's more to this than just the exchange of money for goods and services. It's the social aspect of it. So Amazon has opened stores. They got lots of stores. They bought the Whole Foods supermarket chain. They've got bookstores. They're adding clothing stores. Companies like Warby Parker, the eyeglass firm, which started as a pure play online company, they have 100 stores now, or something close to that. And I was at an event where I spoke, and I met one of the heads of retail at Warby Parker, when they were just started opening stores, and he said, "It's amazing how much you can learn when you talk to the customer." And it was, duh, of course, because they're right there. They've actually driven to the spot. They parked their car. They walked over to your store, so they're already motivated. And so, what do they have to say? I mean, that's valuable. I mean, it's easier than sending a internet, internet survey and saying, could you take the next 10 minutes to answer all of our questions? And you could be eligible to win a $20 gift certificate. No, it's what Amazon is. Amazon was built on customer service. Jeff Bezos said that we want to be the most customer-centric company on the planet. And I've often talked about, and I occasionally give presentations that Seattle is the customer service capital of the United States. And so in addition to Nordstrom and Amazon, there's Starbucks, there's Costco, there's REI, Recreational Equipment Inc., there's the Pike Place Fish Market people who made a whole industry out of that. And there's the rock band Pearl Jam, which is very fan-focused. And in fact, they tried to, several years ago, they tried to take on the big ticket-selling company because they felt their fans were being overcharged. And they saw how complex it is to sell tickets to venues and everything else like that. But their heart was in the right place.
I think you're right. I think there is something special about the Pacific Northwest. And so I really enjoyed talking to you today and learning more about Nordstrom's. And I'm looking forward to seeing your new book that's coming out as well. And I look forward to continuing a conversation and perhaps doing another episode on some of your other books, including the Amazon book. So I want to thank you very much, Robert.
Well, thank you, Darshan. I really appreciate it.
Getting to AHA was brought to you by iResearch. To find out more about us, head to iResearch.com. And make sure to search for Getting to AHA in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and anywhere else podcasts are found. And don't forget to click follow to ensure you don't miss any future episodes. Thank you for listening.